Imagine one of the biggest launches of the year turning into one of the biggest disappointments we've seen in gaming. That's exactly what we're seeing with Monster Hunter Wilds. Capcom's latest entry into the beloved series stormed onto the scene with record-breaking player counts and sky-high expectations, but in a matter of a few months, the narrative has completely changed around it. Today, it's making headlines for all of the wrong reasons, from abysmal PC performance to baffling design and monetization choices. Just plainly disrespecting your customers, and it is beyond frustrating to see how common this is becoming and how developers seem like they just don't care. Let's discuss that in this video.
Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video.
Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here. Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you've all been doing well. It started off with a bang. When Monster Hunter Wilds launched in late February of this year, it shattered records, over 1.3 million concurrent players at launch on Steam, making it one of the biggest debuts for Capcom ever. And to put that into perspective, it nearly quadrupled the player count of Monster Hunter Rise and triple that of Monster Hunter World. Sales blew past 10 million copies in just a few months, and the game even earned strong initial reviews. Windows Central gave it 4 out of 5, IGN gave it like a 9 out of 10. On paper, this was a massive success, but that honeymoon ended fast. As soon as players dug into the game on PC, serious issues became apparent, and word spread quickly. Let's talk about performance, because man oh man is it bad. I've been including Monster Hunter Wilds in my benchmark suite ever since the title released, and I've always noted how this game looks like something from 2014, if I'm being honest. It's got a cartoonish, stylized look, and I'm not saying that's awful. It can look pretty decent in times, but it's nothing cutting edge that we haven't really seen before. And it really doesn't justify the way it should be taxing modern components or hardware the way the game does. Yet somehow Wilds runs like an absolute complete train wreck. In my own testing, I found at 1440p ultra settings, a high-end GPU like the RTX 5070 Ti was only managing like 80 FPS on average. And even though that is obviously playable, like I don't mean to sound like an elitist, it's not really impressive given the modest visuals. For comparison, when you take a look at a title like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, another game which was released around the same time, it looks far more detailed, it's more realistic, and was hitting like 120 plus FPS under the same conditions. And the difference is night and day, which really speaks badly as to how Capcom messed up optimization of this game on PC. And it gets worse because when you try to run it on older hardware, let's say something like a RTX 2080, and I did a revisit of this card a while ago, and I did include it in my RTX 5070 Ti review, so I was able to see how it performed in a game like Monster Hunter Wilds. It turned into an absolute slideshow. I saw 15 to 20 FPS and constant stuttering, and even textures outright failing to load because Wilds was gobbling up more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM. That is ridiculous because there's really nothing about this game's mid-tier visuals that justify needing it to have more than 8 gigabytes of video memory or running at such low frame rates. Yet it chugs and sputters, making even powerful PCs struggle to maintain a stable experience. Reports from other players echoed the same issues: frequent frame drops, constant micro-stuttering, long shader load times. Oh my god, those shader times are horrible. And even crashes during gameplay. In fact, some frustrated users even claimed that the game runs way worse than it did in the open beta, and that's very, very embarrassing. Capcom clearly knew the PC performance was bad because they've practically tried to hide it under fancy new tech. The very first time you launch the game, it immediately suggests you should enable frame generation if you have something like an NVIDIA 40 series card or an AMD RDNA 3 or RX 7000 series GPU. You know, the AI interpolation that adds fake frames, and you know, this has been marketed as a PC performance booster or a FPS performance booster, but it's really just more of a smoothing trick that can make your game appear smoother, but it adds quite a bit of latency on top and can also introduce weird artifacting or shimmering. And on top of that, you also have resolution upscaling stuff such as, you know, DLSS or AMD's FSR. And those are actually turned on by default in all of the presets. That's right, the game isn't even rendering at native resolution out of the box. It's literally lowering the internal resolution and then upscaling it through AI upscaling to hide the poor frame rates. It just tries to shove it down your throat because it's enabled in all of the default presets. And that is a terrible look. I like frame generation, and I think stuff like DLSS and FSR are great as optional features, especially when you have older hardware. But here it feels like Capcom is desperately trying to paper over performance issues instead of actually trying to get to the root cause and fix them. It's like they knew the game wouldn't run well, so they threw in every algorithmic trick to try to mask it. That's not even a real solution, it's a band-aid solution at best. And sure enough, even with those crutches, the game's performance is still pretty bad. High-end rigs with top-of-the-line GPUs struggle to maintain consistent frame rates, and the community has been sharing all sorts of DIY fixes and optimization guides to squeeze out extra FPS. It's absurd. We shouldn't have to tweak config files or rely on feature hardware to brute force a game that looks like it could run on something like a Nintendo Switch. I'm being honest here. The optimization by far is WoW's biggest issue, and one of the root causes of the backlash that they're receiving now. Unsurprisingly, that backlash has translated over onto Steam. Monster Hunter Wilds went from having that record-breaking launch and having a positive review status to now just being rated as overwhelmingly negative. In recent reviews, as of now, barely 18% of recent reviews are positive, an astonishing low score for a major AAA title. For context, that is worse than the notorious PC launches like Arkham Knight or Cyberpunk 2077 at their lowest points. The Steam reviews are scathing, and I can see them being heartbreaking for long-term fans of the series. One sarcastic review reads, "Moving your camera to the area of the camp? Too bad, 12 FPS for you. Ask Gemma to make you new weapons? Here are some game freezes and UI glitches instead. Ouch." Another user summed it up perfectly. The fact that a 7-year-old Monster Hunter Wilds runs better, looks better, and won't crash compared to this title is honestly just sad. When players are pointing out that a 2018 game outperforms your brand new 2025 sequel in both graphics and stability, you know that you've screwed up big time. The numbers back it up with this exodus of players. Monster Hunter Wilds may have had, over 1 million players at launch, but now that player base has totally collapsed. At one point, Monster Hunter Wilds peaked at around 1.38 million concurrent players on Steam, and now only a few thousand players are online at any given moment. We're talking about a drop of over 98% of the player base just gone. According to Steam charts, the 24-hour peak is often in the low tens of thousands, and it dips into the single-digit thousands off peak. In fact, the situation is so dire that 2018's Monster Hunter World, a 7-year-old game with no recent updates, has actually surpassed Wilds in active players. Reports in mid-June showed Monster Hunter World sitting at roughly twice the concurrent player counts of Wilds. Just think about that. People would rather play the older game, or in this case have returned to it, because it's more stable and content rich, while Wild servers are comparatively barren. This kind of player exodus is virtually unheard of for a flagship title in a known series like this for long-term engagement. It's a huge red flag that something is fundamentally wrong, and there's been a number of technical hiccups here. Capcom has noticed a backlash they'd be living under a rock not to. They've put out multiple patches and even posted some big title updates attempting to address issues. They've also posted troubleshooting guides like update your graphics drivers or disable compatibility mode, very millennial stuff like that, and promised a major performance fix to fix certain game-breaking bugs or improve performance. Patches have indeed, fixed some of the early bugs, but despite these updates, many players state that the game runs poorly and core problems still remain. And I actually recently had to test this for a recent video, or the last video I actually posted, and like I said, I've been including this benchmark or Monster Hunter Wilds since it released, and I actually have not noticed anything significant at all. At the time of making this video, the Steam reviews are still overwhelmingly negative, which shows that whatever fixes came out didn't move the needle at all. Once that overwhelmingly negative reputation sets in, it's extremely hard to shake off and dramatically turn things around. Helldivers 2 was able to shake it off because for them it was more of a policy change rather than poor optimization. And game optimization, sure, it's harder, but for such a large developer, it is inexcusable. As if technical problems weren't enough, Capcom managed to irritate players further with greedy monetization and shallow endgame content. Want to recustomize your character after the starting point? Well, that's going to cost you another $7 for a character editing voucher, something that most games actually offer for free. Players rightfully called this out as blatant nickel diming. On top of that, Wild's endgame content is shockingly sparse and disappointingly easy, lacking, the tough hunts or the deep grind that usually keep Monster Hunter players engaged and invested for a long term. Once you finish the main campaign, you're left asking, is that it? And players have little reason to come back, which plays another big role into the massive player drop-off. By the time Capcom gets things turned around and they add more content, it might just be too little too late. Now, I want to zoom out for a second here because the sad truth is that this fiasco that we're seeing with Monster Hunter Wilds is not some sort of isolated case. Lately, it feels like nearly every month we're seeing high-profile releases that either are released poorly optimized or lacking content, riddled with bugs, or all of the above. Gamers are understandably fed up with the release now and fix later approach that big developers and publishers are taking with their games. Take Mind's Eye, for example. This was another massively hyped up title in 2025, a sci-fi shooter from ex-Rockstar game producers. And this was the GTA killer that they claimed. The game launched as a complete and total mess, rampant with bugs, awful performance, steep stutters, and just a bland design overall. It quickly earned the shameful title of the worst game reviewed of 2025 so far. With only about 38 positive user reviews on Steam, the leading complaints about Mind's Eye, yeah, you guessed it, terrible performance issues and a drab, unfinished feel. Sounds familiar, right? It's the same story of a big budgeted game face planting because it just wasn't ready for prime time. And Mind's Eye is just one example. We've seen other AAA releases recently come out in rough shape, then scramble with patches while their reputation just tanks. The pattern is exhausting as consumers were tired of spending $70 or actually now $80 plus on a new game to only act as beta testers for the first few months. With Monster Hunter Wilds, it's especially disappointing because Capcom knows how to make good games. They've had several great Game of the Year contenders over the year, and that, attributes to their solid track record. That's partly why this situation is just so frustrating, whether it was rushing to meet a fiscal quarter deadline or just underestimating the work that was needed for the PC launch. The result that squandered an amazing launch is just atrocious to see. The Wild situation, I guess you could say, has been wild in the worst way, and it could have been completely preventable. So Capcom isn't alone in this, but they're certainly the ones that are under the spotlight recently who gamers have been giving hell to, rightfully so, because they do not want this to become the norm. The message is simple. If you're gonna be charging top dollar for your game, give us a polished and finished product with extensive content. Don't just assume that you can coast on the free will or the goodwill of the franchise or the loyalty of the player base. It's not going to work out well for you. And the backlash that Wilds is facing, it should be a message to all developers out there who actually want to take this approach. At the end of the day, though, Monster Hunter Wilds could have been an all-time great in the franchise. The pieces were there, huge hype, strong gameplay foundation, a willing audience, but technical and poor decisions have turned it into a cautionary tale. The Steam reviews label it as overwhelmingly negative. The once thriving player hubs are now ghost towns. Instead of celebrating what Wilds did right, we're actually ranting about what went wrong. And believe me, I take no pleasure in it. I want this game to succeed, but it's up to Capcom to make that happen. Can Wilds recover from this? It's very much possible with a series of major patches, free content updates, and maybe an expansion down the line. It could win some players back. We've seen stuff like this from No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077 that did turn around their dire launches. It's not impossible, but Capcom does have a lot of work to do here, and the situation remains. Monster Hunter Wilds right now is a absolute mess that needs fixing. The fans have been loud and clear with their complaints, and the ball is in their court. And honestly, I hope in a few months' time I can make some sort of follow-up video to this and say that, hey, you know what? They did great, and Monster Hunter Wilds runs excellent across a wide variety of hardware. Until then, this has been a harsh lesson in how to kill your game's great momentum. Let's hope that the industry takes notes because we're all tired of seeing broken AAA or even Quad A launches in this era. But, for now, thanks for listening to my rant. I needed to really get that off my chest because I'm just frustrated with seeing all these big launches just go down the drain because of this incompetence or this neglect that we're seeing. But as always, stay tuned and stay tuned for future updates and content. I'll catch you guys in the next one, and for now, Capcom, do better.
If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.